Hi, guys. Welcome back to That's All, Folks. Today, we're diving into a topic that I am very passionate about, and I'm so excited to dive into this. Intimacy coordination for film, TV, and theater. Intimacy coordinators, for those of you who don't know, are choreographers who ensure that scenes that involve nudity, sexual content, intimacy, sex are just handled with safety and respectfully. It was actually Tonya Sina who first coined the term intimacy choreography and then created the intimacy for the stage method in 2006. But it wasn't until 2017, with the rise of the Me Too movement, that it actually became more prominent and sort of brought attention to the prevalence of sexual misconduct and, harassment in the entertainment industry. I myself have been on several sets before it really became popularized, where I felt extremely uncomfortable and didn't even know that my uncomfortability was a problem. I thought that it was normal to feel uncomfortable in intimate scenes and sex scenes because it truly wasn't a thing to have intimacy coordinators on set. So the fact that, it took a big movement like the Me Too movement to bring this to light is both sad, but also really hopeful and inspiring. And I'm just really excited to dive into this topic today. So we've got an expert in the field to talk about it today. And he will be diving into his role, his journey, David Thackeray, who is not only an intimacy coordinator, he's a jack of all trades kind of artist, also a director and a writer. So he first started a director and an actor.
Mm-hmm.
You may be a writer as well.
Definitely not a writer.
Definitely not a writer. I was talking about myself there. A director and an actor. He first got his BA in acting and collaborative devised theatre from the Royal Central School of Speech and Drama in partnership with renowned theatre company Complicité. And then he also ventured into directing. One of his first productions actually went to the London's West End, and he also directed an episode of Amazon Prime's Silent Eye. And then he ventured into intimacy coordination in 2017 and is part of the original contributors to the Beck 2 guidance, and also one of the first in the UK with credits on major productions for Netflix, HBO, Disney, BBC, Apple TV+, the list goes on. And to top it all off, he also conducts workshops at drama schools to teach students and staff about intimacy guidelines, consent, and boundary setting for safe and professional on-set practices. And without further ado, David, welcome. I hope you really enjoyed that intro.
That was a lot. But thank you.
I even got it wrong at one point, so you're all good. Pressure is off.
Okay, good. That's really lovely. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you for being here. I guess let's just dive straight into it. Can you maybe walk us through the specific responsibilities and maybe the scope of your role as an intimacy coordinator for all of those people who don't know? And
of course. Yeah. So intimacy coordinating, it starts very much in pre-production. So all the way from that point, looking at the scripts, breaking down what intimate content is actually in those episodes or in the film, what's the intimacy, what's the nudity, and then having the chat with the director, producer, working out what's their vision for those moments. What are we going to see? What's the positions? Nudity, whatever. And that's the information I'll get before I'll talk to the actors. And that's when the real work gets, interesting, where we find out what they're comfortable with nudity, performing wise. We go into rehearsals, choreography. So very much it's to do with consent and boundaries. It's to put in a conversation that should exist right from the beginning when it comes to intimate content. It's very waffly, but that's what it is.
No, that's perfect. I think I'd be interested in understanding a little bit more about how you broke into that role and what path you took to sort of, get into intimacy coordination and maybe offer some advice on how someone could get started today. Because I know that there's a stepping stone.
Mm-hmm.
I've looked into it myself. I looked at it and I was like, oh, this is a lot. This is a lot of steps that I don't know if I can do all of that. So tell us about it.
Yeah, it is a lot. I mean, my way into it was a little bit different from how you can get into it now, because there was no training pathway. There there was nothing, we knew that the role was sort of bubbling in America, and Ita O'Brien was working at the guidelines of intimacy coordinator in the UK. So I was, my way in was acting and directing, and invited to workshop and train as an intimacy coordinator. So workshopping what is the role, very much at the beginning. So that's very unusual way of doing it, and it's just got bigger and bigger, and we have a more of understanding what is required for this role on set. So now, you can train as an intimacy coordinator. There's different companies out there that you can go to, even in America as well, where you can do at least 2 of the levels online, so you don't have to keep flying back and forth. NFTS in Leeds have their own course as well, which is the first cohort, I think, are literally finishing soon. So that's super exciting. I did a little bit of work with those guys. So it's still early days when it comes to intimacy coordinating. It's been 8 years, 7 years for me. So that's what I would say. Do a lot of training. I would get some acting experience, so you have an understanding of the language that we use to choreograph these scenes. So you know what you're talking about. You know how to direct them. And then also having a bit of experience of choreography, dance, movement, bodies in space, listening skills. And when I mean listening, I don't just mean, us talking right now. I mean as in body listening. What is your body telling me right now? My body right now is probably telling me I'm quite nervous. So, right? So
I did not get that.
Well, thank you. But, there's different things that you can see when you're on set and work in these kind of scenes. You can go, oh, okay, there is a bit of nerves. They're playing with their hands, or there's a bit of a shake there, or something, whatever it might be. You can listen to it in the room.
That's really interesting. You mentioned getting training in movement, like dance. I remember. So a little bit of a side story. I think for those of you who listened to like episode 3, you might have heard this, but I went on a 10-day silent meditation retreat earlier this summer. I'm not trying to make it my whole personality, but at the meditation retreat, I had this weird sort of guttural instinct, and I was like, I must become an intimacy coordinator. I don't know why. I thought to myself, that is something that I want to do, alongside acting and writing. And then I got home and I looked into it, and it said that you had to be a movement director in order to be an intimacy coordinator, and that you had to go to like these 3 schools. Is that true?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, you do have to have an understanding of how to choreograph things. So you do have to have an understanding of movement. And yet that might be through acting training, So, myself, I haven't done a whole dance or movement background, but my drama school is very much movement, body-based, So Lecoq, we did Lecoq, Chekhov, Laban, Meyerhold. So there was so much to do with our body. So you do need to have an understanding of it.
That makes sense. Yeah. And you got into intimacy coordination around the same time as the Me Too movement. Is that what influenced you to sort of get into it? I guess my question is more, because I'm sure it did. So how did the Me Too movement sort of influence your decision to get into intimacy coordination? And did it make you realize that this was a critical role that was needed in the industry? How did you sort of navigate that?
So I wouldn't say Me Too was the thing of going, I have to be an intimacy coordinator, because it didn't exist, for myself and what I was doing. And it wasn't something we're talking about right now. I never thought that we'd be doing this right now. But it really helped move intimacy coordinating in the industry. Producers took it more seriously. They knew that something had to change. I guess for me, I turned up for those workshops right at the beginning as an actor and director, not an intimacy coordinator. So I was doing the process as an actor, I was doing the process as a director, and then I was doing the process as an intimacy coordinator. But at first I was very much like, is this going to get in the way? Is the intimacy coordinator going to stop that kind of communication with the actors and the director? Is it going to lose that spark? Is what you always hear other people say who don't understand what intimacy coordinating is. And then once you've done it, you go, okay, well, suddenly I can choreograph a simulated sex scene in 20 minutes or, whatever it needs to be with two comfortable artists who have consented and there's boundaries. So, people always say, oh, did you want to do that? I was like, no, it didn't exist. And I didn't want to do this role. I'm just sort of doing it and realizing actually my background, not only as an actor director, that it makes complete sense. I come from a background of a lot of care and empathy and yeah. So it goes, oh, okay. I understand this.
That makes a lot of sense. A little bit, I'd love to sort of dive deeper into what intimacy coordination looks like when you're on set. So I know that you're choreographing scenes with the actors and that you're talking to the directors and the writers and the producers beforehand and on set. But what about outside of the script? Is there anything, is coming in as an intimacy coordinator onto these sets, does it almost bring about a feeling of safety and respect outside of like the actual filmed scenes or, the staged, do people just, are those boundaries set because it's like, oh, we've got this and people are watching you sort of do your work. And then all of a sudden everyone feels a lot safer and are handling each other with more respect and boundaries.
Exactly that. Like, I mean, there's moments where you go on set and myself, I would feel like a human fire extinguisher where you're literally like, I'm not doing anything right now, because I've done everything in pre-production. I've done everything before coming onto set. And then sometimes you have the actor then turn around and say, thank you so much for today. It was so good that you were here. Oh, okay, great. But because you were present, and also crew as well, they go, great. We know that's being handled. We know that conversations have been in place. Contracts are involved. And they're not doing anything that they shouldn't or wouldn't want to do.
That's really beautiful.
Those eyes are there. They're present.
Yeah. You're bringing that into that space, and you're sort of making people aware of these things, and you're bringing that conversation in. For people who don't really understand intimacy coordination, because I've worked on sets where, a lot of the older generation don't really understand. They're like, we don't need that. Why do we need that? I don't know what accent I'm doing right now. And then it's difficult, as Gen Z, millennial, I'm on the cusp. It's difficult to sort of explain to the older generation sometimes why it's so necessary and indispensable. So what's your elevator pitch to people who, you don't have to actually give me your elevator pitch, but what would you say to someone who's, of the older generation and doesn't necessarily think that it's something that you need?
I've had these conversations with people who don't think they need it or want it. And do you know what? Like some of I come with it with respect because I'm like, look, like I understand what you've already done in the past. You have your own process. You found a way of dealing with these scenarios and situations, and that's cool. Like, I'm not here to change that. However, like, what about your scene partner? What about the crew? And you know what? Like, you might go, oh, you got a little note for me down the line or whatever it might be, and me just being present. Hopefully that will help. The worst thing I could do is get in the way of them. Get in the way of their process, suddenly become a hindrance. I don't think that's necessary because then all that's going to be is a pushback. You're back at square one where we had to try and get people to want us on set. So I think it's a listening again. And I think it's, you shift your process, which I have to do every single time I'm on set. Yeah. Every single new actors, new production, you have to work out what you're given. How do they want to work? as long as I have the fundamentals, agreement of consent and touch, you know, making sure we go through the beats of that scene, which you do for every other scene. So why would you not do it for intimacy? Let's mark it through. And that doesn't mean it has to be robotic. It doesn't mean like, oh, I have to do this and that feels really stilted. Sometimes, yes. Sometimes we can find a flow with it.
Yeah.
And that's exciting.
Yeah, I mean, in general, like your director is giving you direction, so you have to do things that sometimes might feel robotic, but then you find a flow in it as an actor because that's your job. And I guess it's the same thing for intimacy coordination.
Yeah.
But that's really nice that you sort of you're there to solve their problems. You're there as a helpful piece of the puzzle. You're not there to, you know, like you said, cause any havoc or be a hindrance to anyone. You're actually there to sort of, and coming at it from that viewpoint, almost like a therapist, is really quite,
yes and no. Like some people think, or I see, is come into it thinking it's going to be like therapy. Absolutely not.
Right.
Yeah, that is 100% like there's someone else for that, you know, and because if I went down that line, I'd probably cause more damage. You know, leave it to the experts 100%. I think like also to say, you know, not causing havoc, but there is still a time and place where I have to go, we have to cut there, or we can't do that. You know, we haven't signed that. Let's just reassess this. You know, that choreography is going off course. We need to cut there. Yeah.
Before we sort of jump into projects that you've worked on, I'm curious to know whether you've had any experience, because obviously you're a male in this industry. Have you ever had conversations with any female friends who are also intimacy coordinators who maybe feel like they can't always, or feel a little bit, feel like maybe they can't always jump in the way that a man can?
That's a tricky question. There's some badass ICs out there. And
I'm sure there are.
I'm like,
I'm
whoa.
sure there are.
I haven't had that conversation.
Okay,
no,
that's good.
I've had it where they've gone, oh, you have a plus because of that,
right?
But it's no,
they're respected in the same way.
100%.
That's great.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I don't know by what's been happening.
Right, of course.
People,
but it's good to hear that you haven't had those conversations. That gives me a little bit of hope.
Yeah.
Because obviously being, I mean, I've never been a man, but I'm sure that it as a woman, you do sometimes have to really fight your corner on sets.
Yeah.
And so I'm just wondering whether they have to fight their corners a little bit more. But yeah, I guess a conversation.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I'm going to now go and message them in a minute. Like,
no, please.
Hey, have you? I think it's important to check in with that. And you know, that's actually really helpful for me to think about when I'm mentoring or training people to go, hey, like, let's make sure they still get the level of respect that they deserve and should have. It shouldn't be about gender, and that's the important thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I really want to jump into your project because you've worked on an array of projects, from like Heartstopper to The Crown to Industry to Sex Education. Honestly, I'm just naming all of some of my favorite shows. And I'm very excited to talk to you about all of those because they're obviously very different shows, dramas, comedies from different production companies as well and studios. So how does your approach sort of differ according to studio and maybe even country?
Wow. Yeah. Well, the approach, it stays the same as in like the fundamentals, right? Like I'm still going to go through that script as I would do as an actor or a director, but obviously with the head of looking for intimacy specifically, or looking at the relationships, you know, why does that simulated sex scene exist? You know, what is happening with that character for that to happen? But I guess, you know, the easiest ones to think about is Sex Education being a comedy, right? You know, that's just so much fun, and you can be silly with it. You know, there's a treadmill. Let's see if we can do a simulated sex scene whilst walking on a treadmill. Is that even possible? You know, but then you have that kind of freedom because it's comedy. You know, it can be silly,
right? And
the situations for that show as well. When you think about the storylines, it's you can go quite far, and it's important as well. So you feel like conversations that I wish I had as like a show to watch as a teenager.
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Sex Education is it's amazing. I just love it. And all the conversations that are started from sex education amongst me and my friends are some that I don't think we would have ever even thought to have beforehand. And it's so nice to know that younger generations are growing up with those shows. So yeah, I bet it's been like a fun project to sort of work on and be a part of that incredibly sort of iconic show. Because you're really also helping mold the younger generation. And what about sort of, I don't know, have you worked on projects in different countries as well? Do the laws differ slightly?
Like you, yes and no, because it depends on, if it's Netflix or if it's HBO,
Right.
They'll still have their own protocols,
Right.
and things that they need to go through. It's just, working with different actors from different countries, I would say is something, thinking about different culture and, what research do I need to do? So I'm not just suddenly just going, hey, this is one way. And again, that's listening to the actors and seeing what they're bringing to it and what they think their character's going to do. But I guess, other shows where it's felt different, from sex education, comedy, how the process might shift when you're working on something like The Crown.
Right.
Where it's not full of simulated sex and it has a different kind of style to it. That might require me having more of a lighter touch with the actors because they're more experienced or...
and you're thinking about the time as well. So it's like, back in those days, they weren't as intimate in the way that maybe they are now.
Well,
maybe. I don't know.
I think they're probably more back then than ever.
Oh, yeah. It's all just bottled up.
Yeah.
It comes out because they can't express it in other ways.
Yeah.
That's something now I'm curious about, actually. Might have to dig into that. Could you maybe share a couple of experiences, some rewarding ones, some challenging ones from some of these productions? Obviously, without having to name anything, if you don't feel comfortable doing that.
Yeah, of course. I think, so I guess the first thing that comes to mind is working on Heartstopper. Like that production company, the producer, and
well, what's the production company?
So Seesaw. And then you've got the exec producer Patrick, and you've got Alice, the creator of the books as well, and Eros, the director. They brought me on as a HOD, head of department.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, and they were like, come into rehearsals 2 weeks, season 1. Just to be part of it and see what the relationships are going to be like. You're working with a younger cast as well. And because the story is very much about those, the relationships and the light touches, there was even brought on for just that moment in season 1 with a hovering of a hand, on the sofa, because they wanted to get it right or to make sure that it's, telling that story just through their hands. And you're like, whoa, that's obviously, I don't expect that for every single production because that would be, a lot. And a lot of actors would be like, hey, come on now.
I just want to feel it in the moment.
Yeah, like, let me just, we've got this. But, to be part of that journey from season 1 to 3 is just, incredible. I feel very privileged to be part of that storytelling.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Any challenges that maybe I mean, again, you don't have to name any project specifically, but I'm more curious about how you might have navigated those challenges. So one thing that comes to mind for myself is, as an actor, when I have worked with intimacy coordinators in the past, or even just directors who are telling you, okay, walk from this end to that end and say your line in this way. And sometimes you feel like, but it doesn't feel natural. So do you get a lot of like that? And how do you navigate that? And then I'd love to hear also your other challenges that might have come up.
Of course. That's so interesting. You just saying, what did you said something about the stumbling?
That it doesn't feel natural.
Doesn't feel natural.
Yeah.
Right? You get that a lot.
Yeah.
Of course.
I'm sure.
You need to bring it back to go back to that choreography and refine that position and just practice it as you would with a dance or a fight. It doesn't feel natural to go into some of those fight positions or some of those dance positions, but once you find a flow with it, and you're like, okay, I'm with you now. Or if you suddenly then put on, what's the layer of emotion here? What's the intention of the actors, for the characters here? Go back to that. Or it might be something like, okay, that's cool. We know what our boundaries are. We know where we can't touch. So let's just see where would you, let's play it out. Let's see what will happen and find that free flow. Of course, as long as the both actors feel comfortable in doing that. So it's a balance, and you have to kind of work that out.
It's like a tango.
Yeah, of course. And but at the same time, you've got a time pressure of, you know, a first AD going, how long are you going to be? And I'm like, whoa, 2 minutes, you know? So you gotta be quick. And sometimes you've only got, you know, the other day I was on set and I literally could only get 2 words in. So they had to be,
what were the words?
2 really good words.
What were the words?
They were, I want you to think of, it was ice bath, cold water, ice bath, cold water. And what the feeling of that, it then does something to your breath. And that really helped what that moment was.
I'm so glad you said that, because this is literally the best segue into my next question.
Really?
Because I was going to say that is such a directorial note. That's like, because like, again, from like an actor's perspective, I'm like, oh, wow, if a director tells me those words specifically, I know exactly what that feeling is, and I know how to get into it, rather than just do more, you know?
Yeah, go harder, go faster, all of that kind of stuff.
Do it this way.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know what that was either. All of these gestures today. So, okay, great. I am so curious to hear about how your multiple roles of being an actor, director, not writer, how those inform you as an intimacy coordinator, how they sort of help you in the way that you work, and also collaborate with other artists.
I think like I'm grateful to have that past, because I know what you're going through. I know what the director is up against as well, and also not to step on anyone's toes. You know, it's that feeling of, if I was the director at this point, I wouldn't want someone to just come and bulldoze what I'm trying to do. And another thing of like, I can't just go around giving off notes left, right, and centre, because they might be holding that note for a certain moment. They might be going, I'm going to hold that note for the 3rd take, because that's when they'll need it, because it would have warmed up into that moment to be able to receive it.
Right. That's so interesting.
So it's like, and a lot of the time I would work through the director. So I'll be like, what do you think of this? Is that working right now? I was going to comment on that. Is this the right moment? You know? And then sometimes they're like, do your thing, Dave. You know, go ahead. Whatever notes you got, please do. You know, so you have to kind of find out how they want to collaborate.
Yeah.
You know, I've had some directors just go, Dave, take 20 minutes, work with the guys. This is what I'm thinking of. I'll come back once I finish this shot on this other scene, have a little look, and we'll go from there. So, or you have, can you stand over there, please?
Okay.
Understood.
Yes, sir.
Not a problem.
Yeah. That makes sense, though, that you have to sort of figure out, you know, it's a team at the end of the day.
Exactly.
And, you know, going on different sets, you don't know what you're walking into if it's a new set. And you kind of just have to figure out how you're going to dance with this new team that you're with. Yeah, I can definitely relate to that as well. And the different energies as well. And how is your energy going to match these people's energy?
Exactly.
How can you bring a good energy to the set?
Well, you don't know, like, you know, they've been filming all day, or they've been filming for 3 months, and you're coming in for 1 day. You don't know how exhausted they are. You don't know what's just happened before.
Yeah.
They might have just had a really stressful 2 night shoots or something like that. And you're coming in with like, hey, what's going on? You know?
Yeah.
You can't be like that. You go, okay,
True.
let's feel it out. I'm with you. We'll make this work.
I directed a short film a couple of years ago, and we had quite a rough sex scene in it. And or it wasn't a sex scene, but it was an intimate scene that had some kissing in it. And I brought someone on board who was the intimacy coordinator on that set, and the way she handled it was she sort of took the 2 actors aside and took them into a room and sort of choreographed the whole thing with them, and then brought me into the private room. I watched it, and then I was like, yep, this is great. And then they sort of like brought them back onto set. And I remember having a conversation with the 2 actors afterwards, and they said that they really loved having that sort of privacy.
Yes.
Have you ever experienced that where maybe the actors have asked to do it in private and then bring it to the set, because obviously if it's a sex scene especially, that's very intimate and vulnerable. And I could imagine that a lot of actors don't feel comfortable doing that choreography in front of, sometimes 20, 30 strangers.
Absolutely. I mean, a lot of the time what we try and do is rehearsals in before, like a week before or something like that. That's the dream.
Yeah.
Industry were amazing at that for season 2. Yeah, they were like, each block, each director would have a room, and we'd have the different actors come in and we work the scenes. And we also invite the DOP, after we found the choreography. We asked the actors, like, would you mind if the DOP come in? No worries if you don't want that. But actually, that's great for the actors, because then we know exactly what's going to be covered, how it's going to be shot, and it's going to be quicker on the day.
100%.
But those conversations I would always have with the actors prior to rehearsals and on the day anyway, to check in with, how do they want to work? What can I put in place to make them feel comfortable? What nudity garments do they feel more comfortable in wearing or not wearing? Or it's
a conversation between all of you. How do you sort of align the creative vision of the director, or you mentioned nudity garments? How do you, maybe with costume designers or the department, how do you align their creative vision with costuming with the safety and boundaries of the actors?
I mean, it's a collaboration. You have each moment's got its own little problems or little things we have to work out, but everyone's there to solve. No one's ever going, oh, that's never going to work. You can't do that.
Okay.
Everyone's there to go, hey, let's, we can adjust that costume to make them feel comfortable, or we can bring that camera up to just show above the waist, and you can wear joggy bottoms or whatever, it's just to make you to know we can do it.
Yeah.
So sometimes I have actors go, hey, look, I really don't want to show this part of my body. That's okay. But if you tell someone who doesn't know how to choreograph that, they'll go freaking out, because they'll be like, oh, well, how am I going to shoot it if I can't see that?
Right.
And it's like, oh, well, this is how you can do it. Here's an option. What about if they start here? What happens if we start with the wide up to the moment where we have to remove that clothing? How can we edit that moment?
Interesting. So it's almost having a conversation with the DOP as well. And
DOP, director, I would always go through the director first, because then they go, yeah, that's not a problem. I can have that conversation.
I love that. That's so nice. It's like, no, the actor's boundaries have to come first.
Without a doubt. Otherwise you don't have a scene.
Yeah.
They're not going to show up.
100%. Again, like, I wish this was a thing way back in the day. I say that as though I've been in the industry for 50 years. Can't you tell?
Like, in saying that, directors are also like, I don't want to shoot someone who's uncomfortable. Right.
Of course not. Yeah. I mean, unless they need to be uncomfortable in the scene, but still, no, you always want to have, your nervous system needs to be settled. Yeah, I think that's the most important thing. I mean, you're an actor as well. Wouldn't you say that, like, having like a settled sort of like nervous system is like the best thing?
Yeah, I wish I had it. Like, I've done some scenes I was like, oh, this is horrendous. So, and that's another reason probably why I am doing it as well, as you said before. I wish someone was there to say, hey, we need a rehearsal for that, or can everybody leave the room?
Yeah.
So there isn't the whole cast. There isn't everybody who is not even going to be there on the day. Yeah, exactly. What sort of strategies do you then use to ensure sort of clear communication and trust amongst the actors that you're talking to? Because again, you're coming on, you're new to them, you're a stranger, you're meeting them for the first time, and you're working with them on quite emotionally and physically challenging scenes. So yeah, do you have any sort of strategies that you use right off the bat? It's really tricky, because I'm not too sure what I do. It's probably personality as well, like, or something, or warmth, or something that you can't. I don't know. Thank you, mother. What is it?
Thanks, Mom.
Yeah, cheers for that.
No, but just meeting you today, I mean, you are a very warm person, and you do, I think, bring a lot of comfortability to the people around you. And
that's kind.
Yeah, you're very funny as well. So this is just going to be a podcast about me complimenting you for the rest of the time.
I think, like, also, like, if you come in with really clear communication, it's like, this is what the scene is. Okay, there's nudity there. what are you comfortable with, or more importantly, what's your no areas, what's your red zones, and having that open communication. I'm not tiptoeing around what it is, I'm not saying it. It's been very clear of what they need to get out of it. That meeting is so important at the beginning, so they feel like the mystery's completely disappeared. That's the plan.
I love that. Yeah, just being very definitive. That makes a lot of sense.
And professional as well. Like we're using the right terminology. Not skating around it.
Yeah. No, that's so important. So then, what advice would you give to new directors and producers who might be working with an intimacy coordinator for the first time? Hopefully not for the first time, but if it is their first time directing something and they don't necessarily know how to, what advice would you give to those people? I
mean, I'm still working with very experienced directors who have never worked with them.
Okay.
Because they didn't have it in their episodes, or they didn't have it in their films before, or it didn't exist before.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. It always comes with that kind of what are you gonna do? Or are you gonna police the situation, or are you gonna get in the way? I know how to direct these. Why are you here? For me, I would just say, be open to it. Interview or find the intimacy coordinator that you want to work with, because we all work in different ways. Obviously, we have the fundamentals, but we bring different things to it. And trust the process, as much as you can, and know that actually a lot of intimacy coordinators have done so many scenes like this, that we have a toolkit to literally go, hey, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we could do it. So there's a million options. So yeah, have a chat with them and see what happens.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just like you're choosing your other crew and cast members. You're also choosing the person you want to work with. So you know that you're going to be working with someone that hopefully you like and can work well with.
Yeah, definitely.
What is one thing that you would change about the industry and how it approaches intimacy, intimate scenes? What is one thing that you would change and why?
To do with intimacy?
Well, yeah, to do with intimate scenes or intimacy coordination, just in general.
I think, it always comes down to budget. So you're not able to afford for these rehearsals, but the rehearsals are a gift. When we get to do that and actually find the detail that we can and get into the actors to a place where it's, super comfortable. And as I said before, Heartstopper, Sex Education, Industry, they did it really well. And I think you can kind of see in season 2 of Industry that the content goes really far. But that's because you've got actors who know exactly what's happening, how it's going to roll. And they're confident and comfortable. So that's the one thing I would just say, get those rehearsals in. I think, also going back what we just spoke about, not judging what an IC is, or if you've had a bad experience with an intimacy coordinator. Try again, and come with it, open-hearted, and respect it. It's there for a reason. Not everyone has had a great time on set before when it comes to intimate scenes, so respect that.
Yeah. No, I love that. And yeah, I wish it wasn't the case, but most sets I've worked on haven't had intimacy coordinators, because it is fairly new. I know that you started in 2017, but I mean, when you first started, I'm sure there weren't that many people that would take you on, right? They were like, what is that?
It was crazy. The pushback was not even just from productions, but more from actors and directors.
Really?
Yeah, they were like, what are you doing here? Do we really have to talk about this intimate scene, in detail?
That's so interesting.
Yeah.
I guess that's also, humans in general, we don't want to talk about anything intimate. So even if we're acting intimate or we're acting vulnerable, that's still vulnerable. That's still intimate. And to dive into that and to discuss it's just very raw.
Yeah, definitely.
I kind of feel like nowadays with, everyone's going to therapy everyone's talking about intimacy in a more open way. Even a lot of my guy friends are just opening up more outside of just when they're at the pub having like a bunch of fights. They need to.
Yeah.
So have you sort of seen a shift in the way that people approach the conversation around intimacy based on this like societal shift towards more openness around intimacy and vulnerability?
I think I mean, you're completely right. I think 80% of the time that it's an open conversation, or a conversation we should probably have. You know, that's what they're trying to, we should probably have that conversation. Yeah, let's do it.
It's so important. Yeah. I feel like, especially, I mean, I have those conversations with my girlfriends all the time, but like I've had conversation with a lot of my guy friends or, you know, ex-partners where they have never felt super comfortable sharing anything intimate. And I know that we're talking about intimacy physically, but it's also a verbal thing, right? And they sort of coincide a lot of the times. And when you bottle all of that stuff up and you don't talk about it, you don't express it through your body or through your voice in any way, then that can actually lead to down a really dangerous path. So I feel like bringing intimacy coordination to sort of the forefront in an industry like this, I feel like is making massive shifts outside of just the industry, which is really exciting.
I reckon so as well. I mean, but also if you flip that, the intimacy coordinator has to have the understanding of like, you don't know what's happening with that person, but at home, right? Their personal side.
Yeah.
And I always have to check myself going, I'm very comfortable and confident in talking about intimacy, because if I wasn't, there'd be an issue.
You're an actor, you have to,
like
yeah.
What's going on?
Yeah.
But not every actor or person I'm going to meet will be.
Yeah.
And I think that's why we always try and bring it to character, to story, and go, look, I'm not interested about your private life, and you know, because that's what we naturally do. So yeah, when I do that at home or whatever, and I don't usually do that, it's like, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
Please leave that at home. I'm interested in, you know, what about your characters' intimacy? You know,
right?
How do they have sex?
Yeah, you're creating that wall.
You know, yeah,
yeah. I guess that is kind of nice. I would hope that it would fuse into someone's like personal psyche as well.
Yeah, I hope so.
I'm sure it does somehow.
Well, they've gone, oh, I can now talk about that, or
exactly.
Oh, maybe I should talk about that.
Yeah, or I can hold someone's hand in that in that loving way, because holding hands is a very intimate thing as well.
Without a doubt.
So when you were talking about the scene in Heartstopper, I was like, ooh, like I feel like almost those moments are much more important.
I think so. Or the moments where they're about to kiss but they don't.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful moments. And when you get to do those kind of moments, you're like, that's what it's all about. As an actor, you're like,
yeah. Even doing it as an actor, it's just fun. Well, so how have you sort of seen, I guess, the industry evolve since you've come on board in 2017? Because it was hard at first. Now it's a lot easier. People are more open to it. Yeah.
It still has its ups and downs.
Right.
You know, absolutely. You know, people go, right, we need an intimacy coordinator for that. You know, they see there's nudity or there's something there. We're like, oh, we should probably talk to an intimacy coordinator. And you're like, damn, why are you only picking up the call with the phone now? Like, you know, it's next week. You know, it's tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that still happens in some cases. Instead of bringing you on board right from the beginning, that's what needs to happen more often. So yeah, I would say people are aware of it. They now know what we do. You know, Netflix, HBO, Paramount, or whatever, like they'll have intimacy coordinators on board. So that's good. That's a tick, because that took a long time. Yeah.
If you can't go to the schools, if you don't have a certificate that says I'm an intimacy coordinator, is it okay to hire someone who doesn't have that if you're working on an indie project or a short film or a student film and you still want someone to choreograph it, but you don't have the budget to get someone because all of those people who do have the certificates are, you know, sometimes out of budget. And I think, you know, a director doesn't need to have a certificate. A DOP didn't necessarily have to go to school. they have worked and they have experience. So what if someone has worked on set and has experience in coaching intimacy but doesn't? What's your like take on that?
Oh mate, I'm so against it.
Okay, but that's interesting. I'm just curious. Yeah.
I mean, I understand the budgets and stuff like that, but there's still maybe back when there was only less than 10 of us in the UK and Europe, and now there's quite a lot of intimacy coordinators. Literally to the point where I was like, who are all these people? But it's great, it's happening. But there's people who are training, even myself, I would still go and do indie projects, and because I love that script. I want to be part of that. Like, don't worry about the budget. We'll make something work. So don't be afraid.
You hear that, guys? Yeah. Hire David.
Like reach out. You never know. Like it's all. I still do that as a director.
Yeah.
I think the difference between the director and the DOP not having certificates and stuff like that is we are doing something that is it's safety. We are there in a caring form. It takes a lot, and if you get it wrong, it can be very damaging.
Right.
And I think that's the difference, and not only damaging for the other person, but damaging for the intimacy coordinator, as in general, like that role.
I'm so glad you're saying this. I think that's really important to know, because I think, including myself, like I didn't know that. I would have thought, oh yeah, bringing someone on board who maybe has experience, maybe has like a certificate in mental health coaching or something like that. That's okay. But it's nice to hear from someone who's a professional who's worked on set that actually know that's a strict boundary. Don't do that. Yeah,
and it's not good for the industry. People saying, yeah, I'm an intimacy coordinator, and there's so much paperwork, there's so much to the legal side.
Right.
You have to be very, very careful, I think, with this.
Yeah.
In saying that, I mentor people as well, so to get experience, I'll work with them whilst they're on set. Okay. So I set it all up. This is how we're going to do it. They've worked with me before, shadowed me before. So that's another way of doing it. It's tricky to come and shadow an IC because it's a closed set and it's another pair of eyes. So you have to really work with the actors and say, hey, would you feel comfortable in having another pair of eyes there?
Right. But that's, I guess another way in. It's like go to the workshops, shadow people, there's other ways to sort of like get that accreditation.
Definitely.
On your way to becoming a professional intimacy coordinator, or IC. I think I should start calling it IC. So I'm part of the lingo. I'm part of an IC. So then I guess this also happens to lead into my next question. What are the key qualities that you think an intimacy coordinator needs to have in order to excel?
Oh my word.
Sorry, that's such a university school question.
That is huge. I think
top 5, go.
Like empathy, a caring quality. I think, as I said
damn
before,
it. I'm
horrible.
Kidding. Stupid meditation course.
Oh no, it's
kidding. Great. It was wonderful.
I think, as I said before, the acting. I mean, understand acting, directing, qualities in the person, though, I think is tricky. I think a listening skill. It's not about you. I think, don't become an IC if you think, I'm going to be famous, I'm going to be on big shows and working with big actors. No, you're there to create these amazing scenes, but you really are a small part of that whole show. And that's that. I think, people don't make it about yourself and stuff like that.
That's great advice. Yeah. I think that's like the best advice for any artist, to be honest. Even in acting, don't make it about yourself. It's always about the other person.
Yeah.
Always.
In every
scene. Never about yourself. Even in life.
100.
So then looking back on your journey, what's one piece of advice that you would maybe give your younger self before you started venturing into this whole new career that you stumbled upon?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I think trust the process.
Right.
Even now I have days where I'm like, what am I doing? What's going to happen now? Am I ever going to work again? That still happens. It doesn't matter what you're doing. That still exists. So trust the process, live, and it's all good. And have fun. go, I'm still directing. I still do bits of acting.
What do you have coming up?
Oh no!
Any fun projects? Sorry, that's the worst question to ask an actor.
What are you doing at the moment?
What are you working on, especially like with strikes and everything happening this year, last year?
A bit of poetry. No. I've just wrapped.
I'm serving coffee.
Exactly. Yeah. I just wrapped my first feature.
Congratulations.
So, cheers. Appreciate it.
That's so exciting. Cheers. Should we actually cheers to
Come
it?
on, we haven't even had a bit.
Our lovely producer brought us some orange wine, very expensive orange wine that we have not sipped on.
Like
David's being healthy, so we didn't pressure him, I promise.
Obviously.
That is good wine, though. Trust the process. I have to tell myself that as well almost every single day, because I think it's so hard as an actor, as an artist, not just an actor. Just as a human, I think, to put so much, we put so much pressure on ourselves to sort of succeed and to get to the top and to make it big in anything that we're doing. And in the process, you're not having fun, you're not being present. So I think every time I talk to anybody who's like far ahead in their career journey, whatever that might be, they always say that they would tell their younger self to just enjoy their life and have fun and trust the process.
I mean, when people say they want to be intimacy coordinators, they're like, 6 months, such a long time or whatever. 3 years I was training, 3 years as like assistant or, I was intimacy coordinating, but it took 3 years to become like with a certificate.
Yeah.
So that's what it takes. And don't think we just, did it. Yeah.
It takes, time and money as well. I think it's like if you're serious about it, put aside the money and like really jump into that. And there's ways around it. I think there's a lot of help these days.
Yeah.
There's payment plans, there's bursary schemes, there's all these kinds of things that you can sort of tap into if you don't have the financial support to be able to become an IC.
Absolutely,
in it with the lingo now.
With an IC.
But that's so exciting about your feature film. What's it called?
Pops.
Pops. Can we hear a little bit about it?
No,
it's top secret.
Well, it's Is
it about your
keep
pops?
It very quiet. No, it's not. It's not even my writing.
So
it's
that's
very
so
much
exciting.
As a director, yeah.
Because you're not a writer.
Exactly, as we now know.
Would you ever venture into writing?
Oh my word, I have no idea. I'm not very good with that. My
What's
wife
your favorite?
is a writer though.
Oh, she is.
Yeah.
Oh, that's lovely. Is she like you, a jack of all trades kind of artist, or is she solely focused on writing?
Gone back into it. Yeah,
lovely.
After like 2 years.
Nice.
Yeah, so
screenwriter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Would you ever direct something that she's written?
Absolutely. I'm still waiting. I'm like, come on, write me a short or something.
Would you ever act, direct, and intimacy coach yourself?
I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that because the power dynamics,
Yeah.
But direct and act, cool.
I've tried it. It's hard.
Yeah, I don't know about that.
I don't, because it's like you're watching, you kind of just want to get to the next scene.
Wait, did you just go, I'm really good there?
No, it's the opposite. You just look at yourself and you're like, I'm so bad. I look so bad.
What
this
am I
is
doing?
terrible. Like, and then you kind of just want to jump to the next thing because you're like, I don't even want to deal with this. It's so
I don't want to look at it anymore. No more.
You just like freak out. Do you like to watch the things that you're in as an actor?
Oh my word. I find it very nerve-wracking.
Yeah,
definitely. But sure. Of course, want to see if it worked or not.
Yeah, fair
and most
enough.
of the time I'm like, oh, that was really bad.
What's it like working with other intimacy coordinators?
I've only done it a couple of times. Like, I worked, so Elle McAlpine, who did Poor Things, we started off together.
Wow.
And we did It's a Sin. So Ita O'Brien was, was like the lead IC for that. And Elle McAlpine and myself were doing the groundwork. It was an amazing opportunity. So yeah, I love working with Elle. We both trained together. We both understand how we work, and it was such early on as well.
Yeah.
It's such a lonely role, the IC, because it's just you, usually, most of the time.
You don't have like an assistant or anything? You're not allowed to bring anybody else? Unless
you're doing, when I did a scene with 100 fully nude essays.
Oh, wow. Wow. Okay.
And I had someone there for the pre-concept of that, but they got COVID for the actual days.
No.
It was a 7 to 9 days of shooting that sequence.
Just you alone with 100 nude essays.
But thankfully, we did so much work beforehand.
Okay.
With, with all of them.
Yeah.
And the AD team were just like...
That's a huge thing to choreograph, to make sure that
Mate.
everybody's okay. I need to, I'm sorry. I know we've got a little bit of time left, so I need to dive into this a little bit more. What were the challenges there, and how did you overcome those?
It was huge. Like when I first was brought on to the show, I was like, okay, this is, heart palpitations, stress levels up to 100, red flags everywhere, and you just... I had a really good conversation with the first AD, who's amazing. And we went, right, okay, what do we got to put in place? What do we need to do to make sure that they feel comfortable, that we're not just letting them, we're called cut, they're standing there because we're going to be really quick because we change a light bulb. No, let's put their gowns on. We have sections in place where they go to, screens up when need to happen, garments on when we're not seeing the full nudity. It was a lot.
I bet.
It was a crazy sequence. It had water, snow. It was mad.
Wow.
Yeah, but absolutely, it was incredible. Like to do that and go. I mean, I was so ill afterwards for at least like 2 weeks. Of
my gosh, yeah, because all of that stress. I can't even imagine having to sort of. I bet were people coming up to you and asking you, telling you like, "Hey, I feel uncomfortable in this," and then you'd have to work individually with people.
Yeah, obviously there was like moments as like any other show.
Right.
Like, hey, can we just move that, or can we just change that moment? But we were pretty impressive, and the AD team were just on point. If we needed to move something or do something, we did it. Yeah. In
a way, I kind of feel like maybe 100 naked people in the same room, maybe at the end it's more comfortable because everyone's naked. You're not in it alone. Whereas if you were the only person naked in the scene, that's a little bit more daunting.
I mean, you say that like the artists were like, oh, it's quite unusual putting clothes on now. You're like,
yeah. It's like, why are you clothed?
Yeah, like,
why are we not all naked?
It all looks so different now,
Yeah,
but
exactly.
I think suddenly us as the crew, everybody else, we have to go, hey, remember they are naked. I know that this has become our 9 to 5 now, right? Or 6 till 10
forever,
or whatever,
forever and always.
So we have to go, hey, let's just make sure we're still being respectful. Let's not just hang around the sides. It's still a closed set, even though there's 100 of them and we've got millions of cameras and it's a lot.
Yeah.
You have to remind people, as I have to remind myself, that not everybody's comfortable to my intimacy.
Yeah. Do you ever work with doubles? Like nude doubles?
I've had a few occasions. Yeah, it's rare. It's been rare for me.
Okay.
But yep, but the process stays the same.
It stays the
it's
same. It's
interesting because they go, oh, they're a supporting artist or they're a stand-in or
right, because all of a sudden you're thinking, oh, they this is their job, like they feel comfortable in it, so it's okay.
Yeah, no, we treat them. You have to treat them exactly the same, and remind everybody, hey, look, let's put these things in place. Let's put the legal documents in place, and let's go through agreement of consent and touch. And
yeah. That's wonderful. Honestly, I feel like you're doing such beautiful work, and I'm, for one, very, very excited that this is becoming a common practice and also like a legal requirement for most studios. Definitely. I know that it's baby steps, but we're getting there. And obviously there's a long way to go. But it's lovely to hear that it's actually heading in that direction. Do you feel hopeful? Yeah,
of course, always.
Okay, good. We have to stay optimistic with everything else
just
going on in the world.
Holding on to the roller coaster, it's all good.
Exactly. But it's been really lovely chatting with you, David.
You too. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Do you want to say bye? We usually we did it once before where the guest said, "That's all, folks." I didn't do it, and he did. You don't have to. Wow. There's no pressure. I can do it if you'd like me to.
Oh my God!
But if you want to, I'm offering that up to you.
So it's just that's all, folks.